Today on Comicstorian, it's time for Daredevil to get back into the limelight. Over here at Comicstorian, we take some of your favorite comic books, we break down the storyline into a bare-bones synopsis, cutting out the B-plots, the extra stuff, and all the fluff, telling you exactly what is going on in the world of comics. The purpose of this is to allow you to be able to follow your favorite superheroes, and if you enjoy them, you can go out and get the books yourself to get more artwork and more context and add them to your collection. All alterations to the panel, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. And if you want to buy this book, click the link down below. Today we're going to be wrapping up our Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run. To get you caught up, Matt Murdock accidentally killed a man, which eventually led to him going to prison, where the Warden was trying to kill him. He has now gone into the basement of the prison and discovered that the Warden had a master plan to create a gas that drives people insane, drives them towards crime. He has now taken over the prison, and his old cop friend Cole is here to stop him. Meanwhile, out in the city, Elektra, to prove herself to Daredevil, has dressed up as the new Daredevil and is fighting against Bullseye. So here we are, the finale to the series. I hope you guys have enjoyed the ride. Let's get into it. It's good to see you, Cole, Daredevil says, looking down on the officer from his throne within the prison. Cole demands to know what Daredevil is doing, and the vigilante throws down a folder to him. The FBI was wrong, Cole. The Warden wasn't killing them off books for labor duties. He was killing them by making them into lab rats, he explains, telling Cole that the Warden was testing experimental drugs on the inmates, designed to make them more violent and antisocial, that they would take with them back to the world, spread it amongst more criminals to bolster the prison system. It's all about the money! Daredevil shouts, anger filling his voice, echoing throughout the prison. Cole reads the file quickly, agreeing that the system is wrong, but it's better than what Daredevil is doing right now. I know you're infected by this, Sid. I know this isn't you doing this, Cole says, and Daredevil nods, agreeing, but he explains that he's angry and leaps down to Cole. I'm gonna burn it all down. You with me? He asks, holding out his hand, but Cole shakes his head, trying to remind Daredevil that he is just sick right now. I need you to come with me so that I can get you some help, Cole tries to tell him, but Daredevil lashes out, knocking Cole to the ground. You want me to come with you? Make me! He snaps. Meanwhile, over in the city, Elektra is watching the news as she pulls on her costume, aware that she isn't even fully healed yet. Even with the help of Stark's nanotech, she has no choice. She once again heads into the city, and at his penthouse, Fisk is angry, shouting at Wesley as Typhoid Mary has gone missing once again, despite his wishes. He whirls around on his assistant, demanding that he find her. I want her back for one reason: to fire her, to face her. He snarls, and Wesley nods, heading out of the room. Daredevil ducks Cole's first blow, hammering him hard in the ribs, but his next attack misses, and Cole slams him in the ribs and the jaw. Daredevil whirls around, kicking the cop hard in the face, knocking him down, and Cole moves to his feet, roaring in anger, launching himself at Daredevil. He rains blows down on him, demanding him to stop his morality tour. You need to stop this while Bullseye's out there murdering the city. It's those words that make Daredevil pause, and his eyes widen in shock. Bullseye? He gasps. But the fight is interrupted as gas canisters begin to bounce around the prison as the cops move in. The prisoners all beginning to cough, and Cole struggles to his feet. But Daredevil knocks him out, picking up Cole's fallen gas mask, grabbing a nightstick. As the SWAT begins to move in, Daredevil knows what he must do. There isn't much that would derail him when he sets himself on a path. But you, Bullseye, I'm coming for you, Matt thinks to himself as he rushes the SWAT officers, the nightstick slamming down into them as he leaps into the attack. Meanwhile, Elektra is moving through the dark city streets quietly, and she finally arrives in Times Square, activating the piece of tech that Tony gave her. The screens and the billboards of Times Square flash on, showing images of her waiting. Come, try and kill me, she thinks, glaring into the darkness of the night. Meanwhile, back at the prison, Kirsten is still demanding to know what is going on, with the officers ordering her to get into her car and leave the scene. She reaches for her car door, grabbing the phone and calling into Foggy, but as she closes the door, she looks in the back seat and sees Daredevil. He quickly fills her in on everything, telling her about the drug and how it's affecting him. I need your help, Kirsten. I need you to drive me to Manhattan. I need to save the city. Meanwhile, Elektra turns, seeing all of the Bullseye clones approaching her, surrounded by scared-looking hostages, and she draws her size, but a voice calls out from behind her. Lady Daredevil, looks like you and I had the same idea, Mary says as she stalks forward, her swords in her hand, and Elektra nods at her, the two standing side by side preparing to fight Bullseye. Bullseye looks at the two women, smiling broadly. I'm in heaven! 2 Daredevils to kill! He shouts gleefully, looking at Mary, asking her name. Mary, now burn. She hisses at him, fire beginning to erupt around him, but Bullseye shakes his head, raising the pistol. Stupid! Bringing sparklers to a gunfight! He tells her. The fires erupt larger, blowing up several cars, and Elektra moves fast, throwing her Stark Tech sign to knock the pistol out of Bullseye's hand. Mary moves in, stabbing another through the shoulder, and the two women move in, with Elektra dealing with 2 bullseyes while Mary deals with one of her own. But Elektra isn't fast enough, with one of the bullseyes slashing her across the arm. But she blocks another blow, kicking the other away. Mary slams her bullseye into a car, preparing to make the killing blow, but as she moves in, that bullseye leans forward, telling her a secret. There's another bullseye, he whispers, and Elektra, meanwhile, is continuing her fight, yelling for the hostages to run, but Bullseye laughs as he blocks another attack, telling her that 2 hostages seem to be missing. The 2 bullseyes turn to run, heading off into the shadows, but Elektra pauses, knowing that she shouldn't follow them. As she looks around, she realizes that Mary has now disappeared, following the 2 villains, finally tracking them to a nearby theater. She readies her weapons inside, but the lights come on to show 2 people dressed as Elektra and Bullseye, tears in their eyes as they're forced to hold a sigh at each other's stomach. Welcome to my new production. This is the end of your life. Bullseye laughs at her, and he explains that his 2 clones are hiding in the rafters, prepared to shoot unless the hostages reenact the scene where Bullseye stabbed Elektra. What is this, Bullseye? You're a psychopath, but you've never been off your rocker. Elektra asks him, and Bullseye nods, pulling off his mask to reveal his scar, to reveal that he is the original. He explains that he had become too predictable, and that is why he was always beaten by Daredevil. But he had the doctors mess with his brain, make him less predictable, less stable. No predicting my moves now! But Elektra stops listening, activating her Stark Tech mask, banging her sides together, sending out a sonar signal. The mask allows her to see the other 2 bullseyes, see where they are, just like Matt does. No! The hostage dressed as Elektra shouts, slamming into the assassin, knocking his shot wide and allowing Elektra to slam into him. The 2 trade blows back and forth, but Bullseye kicks her hard in the head. You're dead! He shouts angrily, but Elektra mocks him, pointing out that he isn't the greatest marksman anymore. Now he shares that title with others. You couldn't even kill me yourself, she snaps at him. Bullseyes, do me a favor. Kill each other. He shouts, and gunfire erupts upstairs as both of those bullseyes kill each other, distracting Elektra long enough for Bullseye to make a run for it. She picks up his pistol and follows after him, chasing him into the streets, and he stops, turning on her, raising his own pistol casually. I'll give you the first shot, he shouts to her, so Elektra raises her weapon, taking careful aim, but she can't do it. Matt is on her mind. Too slow! He shouts, firing his weapon, ricocheting it off several things before Elektra drops, blocking it with her sign, sending it back to Bullseye, piercing his leg. He screams in rage, bringing his weapon up again, but Matt is there, slamming his fist into the assassin. No more! He bellows, slamming Bullseye into the ground, raining blows down upon him. But Elektra stops his hand, and he turns, looking at her in shock, and he sees the Daredevil costume. What are you? He begins to question, and she shrugs and smiles. You needed help, but they're interrupted as the police arrive, because now Matt Murdock has finally defeated Bullseye. Matt doesn't argue with the cops, though, raising his hands. Ever the fool, Matt Murdock? Elektra whispers to him, and the police rush forward, shouting for Matt to put his hands up, even though they already are. The weapons are aimed at him, but a voice calls out. Excuse me, officers, can I be of assistance? Iron Man asks as he lands, joined by Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. The heroes stand in the way of the police, pointing out that Daredevil is the hero who just saved the city. He stopped Bullseye, and he stopped the prison's drug ring. What have you done? Spider-Man asks the cops. At his penthouse, the last Bullseye is rushing up behind Fisk, the mayor turning quicker than he should be able to, taking a knife wound in the shoulder. Mary bursts through the door, screaming in rage, her twin blades piercing Bullseye's chest, and her momentum taking them both through the window. As Bullseye plummets towards the city below, Fisk moves fast, grabbing Mary by the arm, pulling her back in, with Mary apologizing for leaving him. "I was trying to protect you," she explains, and Fisk nods, telling her that he was scared that he was going to lose her, and he needs her forever. He leans in close, the question caught in his throat. "Wilson, yes, I'll marry you," she whispers. Daredevil still has some legal troubles to go through. Elektra is still running around in his costume, though. And Fisk, well, he has other plans. So we go 5 weeks later, with Daredevil walking out of the prison wearing street clothes and his mask. Foggy and Kirsten greet him, welcoming him to the outside world once more, and he thanks them for all their hard work, telling him that he's thinking more clearly now than ever. But he turns his head, and Elektra is waiting nearby. "But I'll have to take that ride," he tells them, walking away. Meanwhile, Wilson, Fisk, and Mary's wedding is fast approaching. Mary isn't happy about picking out the various foods for the reception, but Fisk explains that having a large wedding will look good for his re-election. Wesley interrupts their tender moment as he tells Mary that she is scheduled for a dress fitting. "If it's white, I'll kill someone," she snaps as she stalks out of the room. "Please don't," Wesley calls after her. After she leaves, Wesley hands Fisk his tablet, offering him all of the information that they have on the new boss of Hell's Kitchen, Butch Ferris. Fisk looks at it for a moment, explaining to Wesley that he doesn't trust that this new guy won't go after Izzy Libris. But then his eyes narrow as he studies the information. Outside of the city, Elektra and Matt finally stop, and she explains to him that she felt that he needed to refresh, that he needed to get away. She begins to walk down the river, pulling off her clothes as she goes. She explains that she still needs him, but that acting as Daredevil while he was away allowed her to understand him better. "I want you to join me because you want to, Matthew. I need your help in facing against the Hand. I need my king," she says, slipping into the water, and he begins to follow her, explaining that he needs to rebuild his life. "I need to know, how did you do it? How did you make the world forget that you are Matt Murdock?" she asks as she pulls off his mask. And he explains that he used the Purple Man's children, that he let them do a mass hypnosis on the world, that if anyone even looks at information that links him to Daredevil, they will see nothing but a blank piece of paper. "But how did you remember?" he asks her, stepping into the water, and she pulls him close. "It's easy. I died." Out in the city, Matt has now retrieved his costume from his apartment, and he's moving through the night of the city. His senses go off, and he lands at a nearby robbery. "You don't want to do this," he tells the young man, and one raises a pistol. But Daredevil moves forward slowly, telling them that he knows that they have their reasons. But that isn't the way to make things better. He reaches out, and he slowly takes the pistol. "It's okay. It's not too late," he tells them gently. And the other robber tries to run, but is smacked by a large elastic hand. "Young man," Reed says with a nod to the robber. Daredevil reaches down for their score, telling them to go home and hug someone that they love. And he hands the money back to the store owner, walking away. As they move through the city, Reed begins to question Daredevil's new tactics, but Daredevil explains that he's seen that the system doesn't work. Together they land on a rooftop, with Reed explaining that he and the other superheroes stepping in to defend Daredevil has begun a conversation about the leeway that the government gives vigilantes and superheroes. Nobody wants a repeat of the Superhuman Registration Act, Reed tells him, but Daredevil shakes his head, explaining that they need to stop worrying about obstacles and optics. They need to stop worrying about what would make their lives harder and merely worry about doing what's right. Now the next day, Fisk stands in his bedroom staring down at the gathering below, mere hours before his wedding. Daredevil calls to him from the shadows, and Fisk turns to see him sitting in a chair. "Congratulations on your early release. I'm sure you're eager to become a productive member of society," Fisk tells him, and Daredevil nods. "I was talking to a friend last night about doing the right thing no matter what, and then I thought about you," he says, standing, explaining to Fisk that he is sure that he had something to do with Bullseye, but he doesn't know what to do about it. They can repeat this battle over and over again, one getting knocked down and getting back up. "We've both done time, and yet we both go back to who we were afterwards, unchanged," he says quietly. And he moves to the window, explaining to Fisk that he's decided to try a new tactic to stop the mayor. "Maybe the way to stop you is just to let you be happy," he says, leaping out the window, congratulating the man on his way out. The wind whips by the window as Fisk eyes following his memory. the eyes that are upon the wedding. People smile as Mary and Wilson exchange their vows. And outside the city, Izzy meets with Butch in a quiet spot in the forest. No words are exchanged, and Butch raises his pistol. A week later, Fisk is sitting with his new wife in a quiet cabin in the Catskills. She asks him to step away from the office to join her for a romantic evening. 5 more minutes, I swear. He promises as she walks out of the room, and he reaches for another file, staring at the words on the front. Daredevil Identity. He opens it, but frowns, anger flashing in his eyes as he stares at nothing but blank paper. And that concludes Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run. Now, all of that setup in the ending is for Devil's Reign, and we're going to continue covering that next week right here at Comicstorian. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and if you want to get early access, make sure you join us over at Patreon. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.